We're now recording.
Well,
Take it away,
everyone, welcome to the forum that we're having for the Commonwealth's attorney's race. We want to thank the candidates again, just as Charlie said, for agreeing to participate with this, and also we want to thank and welcome Sandra Brandt, who has agreed to moderate this event for us. Again, thank you, Sandra. Sandra Brandt will list off all the rules and everything. The candidates are already aware, but we want everyone else on the call to be aware of the rules and how this is going to proceed. So with that being said, Sandra, thank you again. Take it away.
Okay. Good evening, Norfolk Democrats and others who have joined us tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And as has been already said, we have three candidates that are vying for the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's position, which a primary that will be run off on June the 8th. So I'd like to discuss the rules right now of what has been decided. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for their opening and closing remarks. I would say if you don't need the 3 minutes, you don't need to use them, but most of the time people do. You will be timed and you'll be given a 30-second warning as well as a final warning when, and is that the warning, Charlie? You're going to raise the hand? Okay, he says he's going to raise the hand. And for the opening remarks, we're going to have Megan. Megan, would you say your name? I'm asking everybody to say their name because I've asked everybody, I thought I knew how to pronounce your name. So I want everybody to know the correct pronunciation.
Thank you.
Megan.
It's Megan Swizon, like Paisan, like your Italian cousin.
Paisan. Good. And then I'm going to ask Ramin, you're next. Do you say your name, please?
Hey, Sandra, of course.
Okay.
Ramin Fadahi, but anything in the neighborhood will do.
Okay. And last but not least, Amina, where are you on my screen?
My name it's Amina Matheny Willard.
Okay, good. We have everybody here and the opening remarks, and I'll give you the rest of the information. We'll begin with Megan, followed by Amina, and followed by Ramin. That will be the opening remarks. On the closing remarks, we will have Ramin go first, Amina goes second, and Megan goes last. When a question is asked of the candidates themselves, they will have up to 2 minutes to respond. However, if other candidates want to respond or weigh in on that same question that was asked, or a comment that may have been made that they want to rebut, or they want to make a comment about or reply to, then we will do that. We will have up to 1 minute to be able to do that. And the timekeeper will make sure that you are cut off. We would ask that there have been many forums that we've had in the past. And basically, we've had people that have continually talked, not here, but in other forums that I've seen where they've gone on for 30 seconds or more. So please be mindful of your time and watch Charlie when he gives you the 30 seconds heads up and then the final. And so at this point, I will tell you that when these questions have been submitted by the members of the Norfolk Democratic Committee, I have also decided, so nobody gets each question each time, first, second, or third. I've done a variety of individuals. So I will tell you at the beginning when you will be responding to this specific question. So I would ask now that our first person who is going to be opening tonight will be Megan. You have 3 minutes to give your opening remarks and tell us all about you and your campaign.
Thank you. So it is Megan Swizon, but I answer to Megan with, Megan with a Z. It doesn't matter. Like a lot of us in 2016, we saw what happens when the wrong people run for office. And I decided then and there that if there was a place where I could use my voice, I was going to do it. So when Mr. Underwood said that he was going to be retiring, I knew immediately that I wanted to run for this office. I worked in that office for 9 years. I know the problems. I know the problems that are still existing today. I have come to this race with 24 years of experience, of successful trial experience, but also being asked for the last 15 years to teach other prosecutors how to try a case. And I think that says a lot about my abilities to mentor and teach and try cases. I'm the only one who has come into this race with leadership experience at every level, whether it was senior assistant and deputy in Norfolk, or chief deputy in Gloucester County, as well as actual Commonwealth attorney experience. And I have been able to lead successfully in very stressful, very down times in which our victims and our witnesses and our citizens never knew what was happening in the office, because we kept our morale up and we kept coming and we kept showing up. I have seen through this candidacy so far the amazing things this city can do if we come together. And that's what my candidacy is about. It's about bringing people together, not separating us further. Thank you.
Okay. Our next presenter is Amina.
So I have been a criminal defense attorney for the past 20 years. And what I intend to do as Commonwealth attorney is a lot of what I've been doing as a criminal defense attorney. We have seen over the past several years that what the city of Norfolk and across the country has been doing in terms of criminal justice has not been working. I'm just going to briefly talk about some of my platforms. The first one that I discussed on my website is a Norfolk Community Action Partnership, and that is literally bringing the city of Norfolk into the Commonwealth Attorney's Office so that we can make decisions about crime prevention. Another piece is educating the residents of Norfolk about their constitutional rights in general, and particularly when it comes to police encounters. Another platform is eliminating surety bonds completely. Right now, 70% of the people in the Norfolk City Jail are pretrial, and a lot of people just don't have the money to get out. At this point, that is punishing poverty. The fact that they have a surety bond means a judge or a magistrate has already determined that they're not a threat to the community, not a threat to themselves, and that they're likely to return to court. As Commonwealth attorney, the core values of my office will be honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. There's a lot of things I plan on doing in that office, which are, I feel, are unique to having a background as a criminal defense attorney. And I just wanted to read my authority for my platform. This is from the American Bar Association, Standard 3-1.2. The primary duty of the prosecutor is to seek justice within the bounds of the law, not merely to convict. The prosecutor serves the public interest and should act with integrity and balanced judgment to increase the public safety, both by pursuing appropriate criminal charges of appropriate severity and by exercising discretion to not pursue criminal charges in appropriate circumstances. I have campaigned throughout the city of Norfolk, and prior to me campaigning, I knew that there was a need for what I intend to offer in my vision for Norfolk. Since I have campaigned, there's a stronger need. After talking to the residents of Norfolk throughout Norfolk, it is, I know that I am the best candidate for this position. I'm asking everybody to vote for me on June 8th as Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on to Ramin. Last but not least.
Thank you, Sandra. With apologies in advance, Cox seems to have stricken Colonial Place, so if I come in and out, apologies. I'm Ramin Fadahi. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces here on our Zoom. Folks, this is a Democratic primary with 3 people who've declared as Democrats. There is a profound difference among the 3 of us. And the choice that you make in putting up your nominee on June the 8th is going to have profound effects on the administration of justice in Norfolk. The question is, who has the right values for Norfolk, who has the right skills for Norfolk, and who has the least compromises? I am that person. I have lived in Norfolk for the past 8 years. And in fact, I've lived in Norfolk for all but 18 months since 2007. I am a Norfolk prosecutor. I'm not a prosecutor from somewhere else. I am also not just a prosecutor. I'm also not just a public defender. I started out my criminal justice career in the Richmond Public Defender's Office, representing indigent adults and indigent children. I am a former federal prosecutor. I'm a former Virginia Supreme Court law clerk. I'm a current supervisor in our office, and I'm the chair of the office's Criminal Justice Reform Working Group. In short, I am the candidate whom you don't have to guess what I'm going to do, because you will be able to judge me based on my record as a lobbyist in favor of sealing, expungement, and second chances, marijuana legalization, prosecutorial discretion, the end of the death penalty, the lightening of court costs, and the end of the jury penalty. You can judge my abilities based on the fact that over the last 4 years, I've spoken at 2 governor's bill signing ceremonies, including the one that did away with the jury penalty, the single biggest change to Virginia criminal law in 25 years. I am a progressive prosecutor, which is what you should be in a Democratic primary. I don't run away from the label. I embrace it, unlike at least one of my opponents. I am proud to be a progressive. I recognize that structural racism is real. I recognize that Black lives matter. I recognize that who you are, whether you're white, what your zip code is, has a lot to do with what your brand of justice is. I have fought to end that gap. Finally, I am independent. I'm the only candidate in this race who has a demonstrated record of holding all people accountable and who will hold all people accountable. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look at my slate of endorsers, from Bobby Scott to New Virginia Majority to a half a dozen progressive prosecutors. You have a choice. I ask that you choose me.
Okay. Now that we have got our opening remarks, we will go into our questions. And I will also tell you, when we get to a few questions later, there's been a question selected for each one of the candidates, and that's only a question you will answer. So when we get to that point, I will tell who that candidate is, and then I'll give you that question. But until that time, all these questions for each and every person. I've tried to vary who gets it, so everybody doesn't get the first question each time, and and you get some the next time. So let's go now and go to the first question. This is the order in this question. Megan, you go first. Ramin, you'll go second, and Amina will go last. The question is, what will you do to retain women and minorities in your office? Tell us about your track record on this issue. Megan.
So my track record is excellent on this issue. Not only have I spent a lot of my career mentoring, especially women, but women of color, and several of them are supporting my candidacy today because of the work that we did together. I've recognized from the very beginning the obstacles that are facing young attorneys, young women, and young women of color attorneys. In fact, when I was in Norfolk, I am the one who went to Mr. Underwood and asked specifically for certain people to be hired to create that helped create the diversity that office had at that time. I will also treat everyone with respect, which is not something that has happened in that office. I left, and I have said this before, and I will say it again, I left for some very specific sexual discrimination issues, and a lot of women have left the office for the same reason. So what I will be doing is just treating everyone with respect, letting them know that this is a safe place to come work, that they don't have to worry about whether or not their talents or their abilities in court are judged solely on their gender.
Okay. Ramin, 2 minutes. Same question. Do you need the question repeated?
I don't. I know the question. I'm familiar with the accusations. There was a point during my time in this office where we had 40 lawyers, and out of the assistant ranks, there were 4 men. We had somewhere around 20 to 25 assistant Commonwealth attorneys who were women. We've had ebbs, we have flows, we have about still, I think, a small majority of women. Before I was a supervisor, I mentored women in the office. Before I was a supervisor, I tried to help people who were struggling. In fact, I took up for various people to the extent that a non-supervisor can. Now, this is not a democracy, so there's only but so much someone can do. As a supervisor, I have done the same thing. I have taken on people and nurtured people who needed help. In fact, I made it a special point to try and advance women and women of color who had their careers sometimes derailed by people who, I'm not going to say whose camp they're in, but the bottom line is that I've been practicing it. Not only that, so I have a plan to go out and recruit with every Black Law Students Association and the Mid-Atlantic Black Law Students Association. I've already spoken to an elected African-American Commonwealth attorney, and I intend to lead by example. I am an ethnic minority myself. I'd be the second Iranian-American elected Commonwealth attorney in the United States, and my chief deputy Commonwealth attorney is a woman of color. She is a woman of Philippine descent. So we will lead by example, and nobody will have to question. And I would add that whatever information my opponent has is either 9 years old or secondhand.
Okay, let's move on to our last speaker in this question is Amina.
Thank you. So prior to law school, while I was in high school as well as college, I was a legal secretary. I was then a paralegal. I decided to go to law school and practice as an attorney. My lived experience as both a woman and a minority let me know what's important to make sure that women and minorities are retained in each setting. So again, I've been a legal secretary, a paralegal, as well as an attorney and a supervising attorney in my role. So because of the experiences that I've had, I know what's important to the group of people that I am part of. While I was at the Public Defender's Office, I was part of the Diversity Alliance group, which was a group that looked into retaining and hiring minorities. So through my lived experiences, as well as being part of other groups, I would make sure that there is a committee in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that focuses on retaining and hiring women and minorities.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to question 2. Is Ramin will have this first, followed by Amina, and lastly, Megan. The question is, how will your office handle the new expungement and record sealing laws? 2 minutes, Ramin.
So we were involved in both the shaping of that law and in the lobbying for that law through Virginia Progressive Prosecutors for Justice. This is a 12-member alliance of progressive prosecutors who've lobbied for a lot of the things for which I mentioned that I have lobbied. I support the law. The whole idea is you pay your debt to society and then you are allowed to return as a full citizen. And I believe that that includes having your voting rights immediately restored, having the chance to apply for work, having the chance to apply for public housing, having the chance to apply for educational loans. Because the root cause of crime is a symptom. It is not a problem. And if we really truly believe that people deserve to be returning citizens, we have to honor it. So I am very happy about that law. I was, in fact, as one of my first duties in the office, the expungement prosecutor. We will honor the expungement and sealing provisions to their maximum extent. And bearing in mind that those are 2 different categories. Expungement, truly things get wiped away, and a lot of it is by law, and that is great. Sealing is designed to balance the public interest in knowing what people have done on law enforcement and other limited bases without having someone marked with a scarlet letter forever. So we will assist people. We will not play gotcha games. We will not play we gotta win games. We will serve the public interest with this. And to the extent that there are petition and filing requirements, I will gladly work with the Norfolk and Portsmouth Bar Association, with legal aid, with anybody else to set up a procedure that will allow indigent people to petition us and to do it without having cost, if we can find partners for doing that.
Okay, Amina.
So with my experience as being a defense attorney, I am keenly aware that a lot of times there are laws in place that the people that need to use them just simply don't know about. So I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about the educational piece of my platform. What I would do first is have a press release to let everyone know what the expungement and record sealing laws are, explain in detail what they are. After that, I would seek out public television, start setting screens up in different neighborhoods strategically throughout the city, and let the communities know that this educational piece is coming. Then I would educate the community about the expungement and the record sealing process. That education would include exactly who is eligible, what the law says, and it would let them know that they can reach out to legal aid with specific phone numbers given to the community to let them know what they need to do to go about getting this this benefit for themselves. So again, as a defense attorney, a lot of times people just don't know what the law are, and it's the people that I would go into the communities to make sure that they know what the laws are.
Okay. Megan.
Hey, Sandra, real quick, if I could, I wanted
Sure.
to just recognize Councilwoman Mamie Johnson has jumped on the call.
Oh,
Thanks
good.
for coming on, Mamie.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Megan.
Thank you. So my answer is going to be sort of a combination of the last two, because I do believe in this expungement and sealing law. And I didn't need suddenly for a progressive movement to tell me this was important. This is the kind of social justice stuff that we should have been working on for years, because it is a bar to a lot of things that people simply can't get to because of something that happened years ago in their life, and usually when they're younger, before their judgment has fully formed. I also agree with Amina that this is a major education component. So there's two things that have to happen. First, you have to create a structure within the office where there are designated people who know what the petitions are, who know what the orders are, who know how to docket things and work with those who need help with the expungement issue. Then there's the educational component of telling the community how this is done. And that can be done a myriad of ways. For instance, it's something that should be on the Commonwealth Attorney's website. It should be there already, how to do an expungement now. I'm not sure it is. We can also work with partnerships with nonprofits, work with, again, I can always use the Teens with a Purpose Center and have community meetings and do the same thing I've been doing with restoration of rights for the last few years, and just educating and talking to people in various locations about how you can go about getting your records sealed or expunged, but also not doing it in a way that gets their hopes up for something that the law has not changed on.
Okay. I will just say some folks have put in questions and have questioned something in the chat asking if they could ask questions. The questions that we have here tonight that I received were those that members of the Norfolk Democratic Committee had submitted to the chair. So if there is time at the very end, if there's a specific question we have not covered and there's time, we will take a look at those. But the questions we have were submitted already by members. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. We're on to another question, which has to deal with violent crimes. Amina will be the first one to kick this off, followed by Megan and Ramin. The question is, what is your experience with violent crime prosecutions, specifically jury trials? 2 minutes to Amina.
So this is probably going to be a short answer. I have had violent crime jury trials as a defense attorney. I have never been a prosecutor. So I can tell, what I can say is that when I'm preparing for the defense of my client, I do have to anticipate what the prosecution is going to ask. So truly working as a defense attorney for people who have committed violent crimes or who have alleged to commit those crimes, we do have to anticipate what the prosecutor's questions are going to be, what their witnesses are going to say. So that's a short answer. I have not done that because I have not been a prosecutor.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
So I have extensive experience in prosecuting jury trials and violent crime jury trials, especially. I'm very successful at it. I don't win every case, as just about every trial attorney will tell you. If you're winning every case, you're not trying the hard ones. But it's one of the reasons my success at trial attorneys, especially, or trials and violent crimes, especially in front of juries, is why I'm continually asked to teach other prosecutors. And I've actually been asked to teach defense attorneys at times, and why I teach at William & Mary School of Law when I was doing that for the last 6 years. So they are important cases, but you know, the bottom line is you need skilled people to be able to talk to a jury who understand everyday people, not talk to them like they're lawyers. I mean, look, we went to 3 years of law school and barely understand law when we got out. And then we're asking jurors to understand everything within a judge reading jury instructions. So teaching is a large part of success in front of juries. Now, unfortunately, juries will not be sentencing anymore. And I did have a problem with that change. Especially my feeling is if you're going to be progressive, you should be bringing the community in more instead of taking the community out. I am still glad juries are going to be able to make the guilt or innocence decision. And I will continue to teach and mentor and make sure those who are going to court on these cases are ready, prepared. The victim's family know every step of the way what's going to happen throughout the trial. No expectations have been made too high, and no expectations have been made too low.
Okay, thank you.
And I have to say, Charlie, you look like you're waving away a bug or something.
He needs to be more distinct. Is that what you're saying? Okay, Ramin, same question, 2 minutes.
So I've tried violent crime cases in more than one jurisdiction as a prosecutor. And if you count possession of a firearm as a convicted felon, I've tried a violent crime jury as a defense lawyer. I'm the only candidate in this race who has tried jury trials as a defense lawyer, a state prosecutor, and in the 18 months I was in Charlottesville, the only federal jury trial in the Charlottesville courthouse. I secured the only life sentence on an armed robbery, in fact, on a non-homicide case in Chesapeake in memory. I have tried murder for hire, I've tried murder, I've tried home invasion, I've tried rape, I've tried robbery, I've tried them all. And I know how to try a case. And where I learned how to talk to people was in the Richmond City Jail and in the Richmond Detention Home, and in encountering people from all walks of life, and I'm watching how my father talked to everybody when he would take me around the hospital when I was a kid. This question matters if you're in a small town jurisdiction. If you're in a place like Gloucester, let's say, that has 6 prosecutors, your Commonwealth attorney is going to be in court a lot, and being a good lawyer, as I am, it actually makes a difference. But when you're talking about Norfolk with 40 prosecutors and 45 staff, you're talking about a completely different game. So asking us in a Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney Forum how good we are at trying cases is like asking Bill Belichick how far he can throw a football. It is irrelevant. The core question is, how good is the person as a field general? I am the field general. But I will tell you, when the high profile cases hit, when people expect me to be in court, I will be in court, and you'll see just what I'm capable of doing.
Okay.
I would like to respond to that really quickly.
Sure.
Just quickly, it doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in, and most of my violent crime cases were in Norfolk. Luckily, you're right, Gloucester doesn't have as much, but I would still put my Gloucester record up against your record in Norfolk.
Okay. Let's, I think one of the things that this next question relates to is, I assume that you have been messaging folks either via your website, or you have done some mail to individuals, or and whatever your messaging platform has been to get your message out. This is what this question relates to. So this question will start with Ramin, and then Amina, and then Megan. And the question is, tell us about your messaging to the public during your campaign. It appears that there have been multiple messages going out to the public with alternative mailers for some candidates. How will you ensure that you will be the prosecutor for all the citizens of Norfolk? Ramin, 2 minutes.
So my message remains consistent. I deliver the message by mail, I deliver it digitally, I deliver it by phone, and I deliver it on people's doors. My message is that I'm a reformer, that I believe that Black Lives Matter, that I believe that the criminal justice system delivers one kind of justice for the rich and the well-connected and another for everybody else. There is no difference in any of my messaging. I do have some variations in the information that I send out. That's a simple matter of respect. It's called meeting people where they are. If Senator Warner puts out something in recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, and then the next month puts out something in acknowledgement of LGBTQ Awareness Month and talks about issues particular to those communities, nobody's being divisive. It's called being respectful. And that is what I have done. And that is what I intend to continue doing, because understanding what people's concerns are and addressing their concerns is both good politics, a necessary component of being Commonwealth's attorney, and simple good courtesy.
Okay. Amina.
So I have not sent out any mailers. So I'm going to answer that question. However, I'm going to use my minute to talk about the question was making sure that I would be the Commonwealth attorney for all of the people. One of the platforms, again, is the Norfolk Community Action Partnership. And just to expound upon that a little bit, it's the first platform on my website, and it's the most important. What that looks like, basically, the first 30 days in office, I would invite the city into the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And so what that looks like is having a large Zoom meeting. It would include from each community, at least 3 members from each community. One would be someone from the Civic League. One would be a citizen, a non-Civic League member of the community. Another one would be someone from the community who has a felony conviction. I would invite a representative from the Norfolk Police Department, from the Sheriff's Department, from the Norfolk Community Services Board, from churches, from businesses. The goal of this Norfolk and different organizations, high schools, different organizations that are in the community. And the goal of this community action partnership is really to have a representative from every part of Norfolk meeting so that we can discuss crime prevention issues. One of the examples I'm going to use, and it would be, I imagine there's a lot of organizations in the city of Norfolk. I have talked to so many nonprofit organizations and businesses, but I'm going to just give you 2 examples of how this would be used. An officer who sees someone laying on the bench, normally now charged with trespass, he goes to jail with a $1,500 bond. After we have this Norfolk Community Action Partnership, there will be an agreement that an officer can call either the NEST program or the Norfolk Community Services Board for housing. And instead of going to the jail, that person will go to housing. So there's so many other examples, businesses being able to give community, okay, I'm done. But that's the idea. So I would be bringing people in. So we'd be talking at least once a month to everybody.
Okay. Megan.
Thank you. So I have been doing mailers. We've done some texts, canvassing, as well as website and some emails. And my message is exactly the same, no matter who across the city gets it. And that's what's really important. You need to know who you're electing. And unfortunately, Mr. Fadahi forgets that we're all kind of watching what has been happening, and there are different mailers going to different communities. If anybody wants me to send them, I can send them pictures, and what is happening is we're having an argument about being divisive, and then we're proving that people are different instead of, again, talking about the ways that we are the same. In addition to that, you're not going to see me show up at one place and say Black Lives Matter, but then at another that's almost all white, not say it, or wear my Black Lives Matter mask at a certain location, but then another all white location, not wear it. You need to be the same person for every citizen in this city. And finally, you want a Commonwealth's attorney, no matter what their message is, that it is honest and not a win at all cost. The most recent mailer that had Mr. Bobby Scott on it, and I'm sure he wouldn't be happy if he knew about this, says that Mr. Faddy has been a deputy for 8 years. Very specifically, his 8 years as a Norfolk deputy. He's been a deputy for 2. It also talks about decades of experience, while another mailer talks about 14 years. So this cannot be a win at all cost, hope that people don't do their homework kind of election. You need to know who you are voting for.
Okay. All right, we're in the section now of questions that have been submitted once again by our committee. And these are single questions that will be.
I'm sorry, Sandra. I think
Okay,
the rules
sorry.
do allow for a 1-minute response.
Sure, go for it.
I'll be brief. My opponent is listed as the Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney on the Gloucester County website. She anoints herself Chief Deputy every time she appears out. She is not the Chief Deputy because she is the deputy. She has no deputies. Saying that having 2 mailers that are not exactly the same is divisive is like saying that it's divisive to investigate the January 6th attacks. The divisiveness is the fallback position for people who don't want to have honest conversations. And the fact is, in the criminal justice system, we are not all the same. Black people and brown people get treated differently. Anybody who wants to say we should all be the same and we are all the same does not have Norfolk's values and doesn't understand Norfolk.
Megan, do you have a rebuttal?
Absolutely. I'm not saying we're all the same. I'm saying a lot of us want the same things, but also, I mean, you brought this up before. I am the Chief Deputy. I will show everybody the human resources document that says my title is Chief Deputy. If you go on the email directory, it says Chief Deputy. Years ago, when I started, my boss and I said, well, because there aren't deputies, do you really need to be called Chief Deputy? And my ego was not one that said I had to be Chief Deputy. And the reason why I tell people now that I am the Chief Deputy, which in fact I am, is because they need to know there's a distinguishing issue between the two of us in our level of leadership and experience. A deputy has different roles than a Chief Deputy does. I have done the role of Chief Deputy and I have that title.
Okay. Now let's move on to our single questions. I mentioned this earlier that we will have, each one of you will have from the next 3 questions will be directed at each of our candidates individually. And the first one goes to Megan. Megan, with your husband working in law enforcement, do you feel like you can be independent and have your thoughts, you thought of any safeguards to avoid appearance of impropriety?
Yes, hold on, my computer wasn't plugged in. Absolutely. So I figured this question was coming, and it's the reason why I put it in my August announcement video, which is I understand that this might be a concern for people, so please come and have a conversation with me. And I can guarantee you every single person who has taken the time to have that conversation walks away knowing I know my own mind. Who I am married to does not dictate my beliefs, does not dictate how I act. So the way we're going to handle things is, look, if the community thinks that I can't make a decision, we bring in a special prosecutor, which is what we should be doing on law enforcement cases anyway, when they possibly could be charged. So here's the thing. Like I said, I get it. In 2 minutes is not long enough to have that discussion with people who feel like it's a concern. So email me, let's set up a time, let's set up a Zoom meeting. I will be more than happy to answer those questions. But here's also the other thing. When I started in 1997, my then boss, Bob Humphreys, who was on the Court of Appeals, asked me questions on whether I could be tough enough on crime based on my then husband's career with the Community Services Board. So I am now being asked, can I be tough enough on law enforcement based on my husband's career? Women, you should be offended. We need to talk about our careers, not our husband's careers. I own my own mind. I have done so for my entire career, to the point where I even called out an officer for lying on the stand while I was in this relationship. And believe it or not, I got more investigative harassment from my own office than from the law enforcement agency that I was calling out.
Thank you. Okay, our next single question goes to Amina. Amina, what can you bring to the office without prior prosecutorial experience? 2 minutes.
So the climate that we are in right now in this country calls for someone with a career defense background. What I can bring to the office is compassion, different ideas about how to do things. For example, what I indicated about someone being charged with trespass, instead of just taking them to jail, putting them in jail with a surety bond for 6 months because they don't have a place to stay, I would start that Norfolk Community Action Partnership where that person can go to the NEST program or to the homeless program that's sponsored by the Norfolk Community Service Board. As a defense attorney, I have had cases where I've had clients who have stolen from businesses. What I would do is have my client sit down with the business owner, talk about what happened that day. I had to do that in order for me to be able to go in front of the judge and say that they have talked. If we can just continue this case, I've had cases where the business owner has agreed to allow my client to come and do community service. So I'll let the judge know the business owner, my client, have talked. He's going to do community service or do free work for the business owner, come back in 6 months, we're asking for a dismissal. So the out of the box, innovative thinking about how to prevent crime is what this city needs. And we've seen over the past year that it's what this country needs, and it's been a mandate on this country. The innovation comes from doing this, what I've been doing for 20 years. So my goal is crime prevention. I can do that with the community. If you can imagine that business owner, the next time he sees the person that stole from him, they know each other now. So there's a lot of stuff that I would do that I've been doing for the past 20 years to change this process. What we've been doing for the past 8 years has not worked. And it's clear throughout the country that it hasn't worked. So me being a defense attorney, I believe I know that I'm the best candidate because I'm a defense attorney.
Okay, let's be mindful of Charlie's blue wave, as they say. The last single question goes to Ramin, and it says, evidently you have sent out a mailer, and on your mailer, the question is, can you please explain more to us about your federal prosecutorial experience that you put in your mailer?
I'd be glad to. I served as a special assistant United States attorney in Charlottesville. And the really unusual thing about it is that I volunteered. I went and did it without pay. I had worked in Chesapeake for about 4 years, and I was looking to do something different. And Charlottesville seemed like a good option. I actually kind of applied on a lark. I went out there and I had an amazing experience. I was one of 8 people who served in that program, and I got the flagship assignment in Charlottesville doing the most interesting work. My first week there, I initiated an Interpol red notice that went all the way up to the Italian Supreme Court to bring a child abuser back to the United States. I handled a great deal of that work. In fact, the AUSA said, do you know what an Interpol red notice is? And I said, no. And they said, well, neither do we. You figure it out. I did that. That guy's doing 40 years in federal prison now. I handled a $5.8 million cigarette trafficking case that I put together, where my third chair was a lawyer by the name of Tom Shia, whom some of you all may know. He essentially worked on my side. With me taking the lead on the case. I indicted an armored car company for under-armoring MIRVs going to Iraq. I tried the one case that all the federal prosecutors, I was the only federal prosecutor to try a case there, was a methamphetamine distribution case that involved multiple cooperators. And I brought that case to a successful conclusion, where my co-counsel is now lead of training for the Commonwealth Attorney Services Council. So I did violent crime, I did white collar crime, I did international crime, and I did trial work. And all of it served me well here.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra, real quick, I did want to recognize the Grand Dame of Newport News, former Chief of Staff of Bobby Scott, and with the Bobby Scott campaign, Joni Ivy's on the call. Take it away.
Welcome, Joni. You're muted.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Okay, let's get into our next question. And this is a lengthy question. So when it's your time for you to speak on this question, please let me know and I'll be glad to restate the question. The first one will be to Megan, the second to Ramin, and lastly to Amina. The question is, across the country, there is a new sense of how citizens view police when we take into consideration the George Floyd case and other similar cases. Protests in Norfolk have been very peaceful, but if one of the protests in the future turned destructive or violent, how would you assess police conduct in addition to the conduct of the protesters? Finally, how would you incorporate that viewpoint into your role as the city's chief prosecutor? Megan.
So I actually grew up going to protests. My father was an anti-war protest. My mother was an Equal Rights Amendment protester. I watched my dad get arrested, picked up and thrown in paddy wagons on the Washington in front of the White House, So that is something that I am very familiar with. When it comes to things that become violent, you do have to, and I would as the Commonwealth's attorney, before any absolute decisions were made, view all the evidence. If someone is just acting violent, then they need to be held accountable. But we have seen in these riots, and I think a lot of law enforcement would even agree, when you watch some of this footage, it's law enforcement caused. And if it's law enforcement caused, those people who are reacting should not be charged. You have to look at every piece of evidence and look at what you have before you make a decision, who is at fault. That's how I would handle it as the Commonwealth's attorney. That's how I handle it as a person. I have had lots of experience where the media does not show every aspect, so I would want everything before anybody is put to blame. A lot of tensions run high, and you don't really know sometimes what that ignition spark is. And if it's law enforcement that created the ignition spark, they need to be held accountable for it.
Thank you. Same question to Ramin.
All right, Sandra, I'll try to catch all those parts. Please correct me
Would
if
you
I
like
don't
for
get
me
them
to
all.
repeat it for you?
I think I got it.
Okay.
So first of all, we're not going to call them riots. I think the minute that we use the word riot to describe protests and civil rights protests, we already know what conceptual framework we're using. If you want to see a how not to, you can look at what happened up in Richmond, where there was peaceful protesting and there was police escalation. We got to give our police chief credit that he built the groundwork, built enough community trust that we didn't have any violence here. And it wasn't something magical about Tidewater, because you crossed Newtown Road and it was different. I will always be independent of the police. Always. No one will ever question whether I'm independent of the police. No one will ever question whether I'm independent of the sheriff's office. Nobody will question whether I will be a watchdog for justice, both because I have been and because I do not have, I am completely independent. If you want to see a how not to, again, you can look at Richmond. Where all of a sudden protesters who were being scooped up in police dragnets were required to do community service for exercising their First Amendment right to petition their government. You're not going to see that under me. What you will see is an individualized assessment. I'll tell you what I tell the police. When the police do right and it's unpopular, I'll stand up and I'll say that they did right. When the police do wrong, and it is regardless of whether it's popular or unpopular, if they commit a crime, I will prosecute them. And you all will never have to wonder what my motivations were, what my pre-existing biases were, or whether some other relationship had anything to do with my decisions.
Okay. Same question to Amina.
Okay, I cannot stress enough the different ideas that I have. First, what I mentioned before is that my office's core values would be honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. With regard to the protest issue, again, with the Norfolk Community Action Partnership, we would be having regular meetings, which would include law enforcement. The idea of that group is it represents the city. So we can say, if there is a group that's going to have a protest, we would discuss that in that meeting. This is what the protest is for. This is what it's going to be about. This is, there will be someone from the police department there. So we'll discuss that in advance so that we can work everything out. My goal for everything that I'm trying to do is crime prevention and taking a village approach and just talking about everything that is going to happen. So we will be so in tune to the community that we'll know that that protest is going to happen, and we will address it accordingly. Hopefully there will be no violence, but obviously if there is, we will assess who did what, and we will be transparent about everything that happens. But again, I cannot stress enough that the ideas I have, being a defense attorney for 20 years, really focused on crime prevention. And that Norfolk Community Action Partnership, where we're talking regularly, that will include, okay, there's a protest coming up this weekend. Can we handle it this way? The police officers will be there. So I cannot stress enough that the ideas that I have are innovative. I've been doing them for 20 years, but the focus is crime prevention, so there will be no violence.
Okay, thank you. This next question hopefully won't be as detailed as the last, but it's thoughtful. And we'll start with Ramin on this one, and then go to Amina and then Megan. If there is a conflict between what the law says and what you believe is justice, what prevails?
We have an oath to uphold the law, and we follow that oath. The question is very interesting because 2 years ago, when our office rolled out the policy that we were going to dismiss marijuana possession cases, this was exactly the anti-reform narrative. This was the anti-reform attack line on what we were doing. That when we saw that Norfolk, that's 47% white and 43% Black, that 80% of our marijuana arrestees were Black for a crime that never should have been a crime, when we exercised our prosecutorial discretion, people, including some people in this room, said that we were breaking our oath of office, that we were violating the law. The judges said we were violating the law. I went to the Virginia Supreme Court to litigate that. The Supreme Court didn't reach that issue. They dismissed. But I can tell you who agreed with us was the General Assembly, because they legislatively overruled the Virginia Supreme Court on that issue in a statute that VPPFJ and I had a hand in drafting and getting passed. The most important power that a prosecutor has is the discretion to prosecute. Now, if there is no discretion, then we follow the law as we must, protesting if we can, recognizing that we can't try cases in the press. But the number one thing that prosecutors do is decide what is the value of a case, how a case should be charged, and what should be done with it. If anybody has any questions on where I stand on that, they can look at my statements over the last 2 years, and they can look at the Virginia Code. But you know, the whole point of being the executive and of being accountable to the people is that we get to exercise discretion within the law.
Okay, Amina.
So the question, as I understand it, is whether we would follow the statute or what we feel is justice. Is that?
Yeah, if there's a conflict between what the law says and what you believe is justice, what will prevail for you?
What I believe is justice. And let me tell you why. First, I'm going to read this authority that I read before, because this is, again, from the American Bar Association. It's standard 3-1.2, functions and duties of the prosecutor. The primary duty of the prosecutor is to seek justice within the bounds of the law, not merely to convict. The prosecutor serves public interest and should act with integrity and balanced judgment to increase public safety, both by pursuing appropriate criminal charges of appropriate severity and by exercising discretion to not pursue criminal charges in appropriate circumstances. So discretion of the prosecutor is, this is my authority for it. And I can give you a specific example. Mandatory minimums are awful. I don't agree with them. They are the law right now. Mandatory minimums fuel mass incarceration, and they right now prosecutors have been using them to leverage guilty pleas, deny the residents of Norfolk their constitutional rights, and they also tie judges' hands. I will not prosecute mandatory minimums because they are not there. So that's an example of where I feel that where it says prosecute charges of appropriate severity, when you have a 5-year mandatory minimum for someone that just has a firearm that's not using it, the severity is much too harsh.
Okay, Megan.
So we've always been able to do both in many ways. And so let's take, for instance, years ago, and I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, the word people don't want to talk about sodomy, but for years, the charge of sodomy was used unfairly against same-sex couples. And we could easily, as prosecutors, say, we're not prosecuting under those facts, right? It doesn't mean we're never going to prosecute a case under that charge, but we're not prosecuting under those facts. Same thing with mandatory minimums. We can make amendments to make sure that mandatory minimums, if they are not just, do not apply to a different case. But I do believe strongly that our job is to enforce the laws, not to make the laws. And unfortunately, again, I'm going to say what I did before. I don't understand the progressive movement wanting to grab more power. If you're truly progressive, you don't want to grab more power. The law that Mr. Fadahi is talking about is one that now says a Commonwealth attorney can drop any charge for any reason as long as it's not race, gender, or other discriminatory purposes. What this does is makes us more powerful than the legislature. It means the legislature can pass any law, even school, firearms on school grounds. And if we decide we don't happen to like that, we can get rid of every single one of those charges. That is not power for the people. That is power for prosecutors. That was not an appropriate law to pass. You could have made the decision not to prosecute cases and not gone to the press with it. Just done it. That's where the problem came in, is we wanted to make a huge soundbite about it and make it that issue. And the moment the judges got called out on it, they reacted to that. And that's what caused all the problems down the line, including people having to pay more court costs.
Sandra, may I have my 1 minute, please?
Sure.
I think that if the question is what does one particular prosecutor think, or what do 140 legislators plus the governor think, I think I'm going to side with the 140 legislators and the governor. They probably know better. And the whole reason that statute had to be passed is because judges were stepping out of their bounds. That statute happens to restate federal law, and it leaves out, my opponent left out one factor, which is also if there's bias involved in the dismissal. This makes perfect sense and why it should exist. The only part of the criminal justice system that people get to vote for are prosecutors. Finally, the very fact that my opponent says that we should have kept what we were doing quiet demonstrates a basic lack of understanding of the realities of prosecuting in Norfolk, which is people don't trust the system. The whole purpose of this dismissal with both racial justice and equity and a public demonstration of racial justice and equity. If you're doing it in secret, like you're doing something dirty or wrong, it doesn't achieve the purpose and it doesn't recognize that you're doing the right thing.
Megan, do you have a rebuttal?
I do. The process could have been made the exact same way, only without the public announcement, which did actually end up costing people a lot more money because when they got there, the promise wasn't able to be fulfilled. And the idea that it isn't that the only person you can vote for in the criminal justice system is the prosecutor isn't true. You can vote for your legislators. They're the ones that need to make the appropriate laws. And finally, to blame judges is again sort of counterintuitive to, we took sentencing away from juries and gave it to the judges, but the judges are over sentencing or overstepping. So again, let's think balanced. Let's think what really is in the best interest of everyone.
Okay, let's move on to a very simple question for everybody. And I'll start with Megan this time, and we'll go to Ramin and then Amina. And the question is simply, have you ever managed a team of people?
Yes. So I have managed a team of people. In Norfolk, I was what they called the special crimes deputy. That's not what most people think of it from, like SVU. It was actually the high dollar financial crimes division. I was the deputy over that, as well as serious burglary offenses and other serious property crimes. I was also a deputy over the juvenile team, one of the juvenile teams in Norfolk while I was there. Now, Mr. Fadahi has made sort of this crack, but he is right. I supervise an office smaller than some of the teams in Norfolk that I supervised, but I supervise them on a different level. In this position, I have the opportunity to hire, to fire, to make budget decisions, and to make sure that everything is running smoothly in every aspect of the office. And I have done that. And so, yes, at supervision levels, every level possible.
Right. Ramin.
Yes, I've supervised the special crimes team in this office, the same team that my opponent supervised. I currently supervise the drug team that happens to have 6 prosecutors on it total, including me. And I also am the chair of the office's Criminal Justice Reform Working Group. These jobs require management, they require delegation, they require discretion, they require guidance, and they require mentoring. So I've done all of those things. Fun fact, I happen to be the co-president of Yale Student Academic Competitions. When I was in college, I managed the Quiz Bowl team. And I tell you, I learned more about having to coordinate 60 high school teams from all over the United States coming up to Connecticut, making sure that their question packets were right, making sure that their lunch was where it needed to be, making sure that, that you'll laugh, that everybody had a shower that morning when they came to moderate. Than I've learned in most of my legal jobs. So I was a young manager at the time, but I did have a lot of fun managing in a completely different context.
Thank you. Amina.
Yes, I have. So as a when I started with the Public Defender's Office in Petersburg and Virginia Beach, I started teaching attorneys about juvenile court issues. Once the Chesapeake office, the new Chesapeake office opened, I got a call from the public defender that was going to be over that office. She had seen the tapes where I was teaching court-appointed attorneys as well as public defenders about juvenile court issues, and she asked me to come and be the supervisor of the juvenile court team. So for 8 years while I was in Chesapeake, I was the supervisor of the juvenile court team, which handled, juvenile court handles crimes or offenses committed by juveniles, but it also handles domestic relations. So family members, family adults that have been charged with crimes against each other that are family members. It also deals with the most serious sex offenses. So juvenile court also handles cases where adults have violated minors in a sexual way. So that was a wide range of cases that I supervised for that 8 years. So for that 8 years, I was the supervisor of the juvenile court team.
Okay. Amina, I'm going to ask you to keep your mic open because I'm going to give you the next question first.
Okay.
What are the biggest issues facing the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office?
Well, I can tell you that since I've been campaigning, I think one of the biggest issues is a lot of people in the city of Norfolk who are affected by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office doesn't know who's in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. They haven't had any communications with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. A lot of times they don't know what kind of power that office has. So one of the things, again, with my Norfolk Community Action Partnership, I will make sure that the residents of the city of Norfolk know exactly what the Commonwealth Attorney's Office does. We will be in the community constantly. So just knowing what the Commonwealth Attorney's Office does and having a relationship with the community is extremely important. Like I said, I found that while I was campaigning, nobody really knew what I was talking about when I talked about the position. So I think that's important, that it's part of the community. Again, the educational piece that I talk about, making sure that people know what their rights are when dealing with police officers, making sure they know what their constitutional rights are. And then, you know, dealing with the school to prison pipeline. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office can get involved in the community by educating the community, like I talked about, having pop-up screens, not just about criminal justice, but also about educational components, which is a part of crime prevention. So again, just being educated on the power that that office has and being in tune to what the community needs. So I think right now that would be the main issue.
Okay. Ramin.
So Republican and Democratic prosecutors will tell you that Virginia has done criminal justice on the cheap. One of the biggest problems that we have is that we frankly don't have enough lawyers, especially with the advent of body cams. The amount of work that we have to do in a given case is high. And in Norfolk, the cupboard's bare. We don't, unlike Fairfax County that just essentially doubled the size of its office on city money, we don't have that. So what we do need to do is to try and provide a welcoming and happy environment. We've managed to do that with little things. Our lawyers can wear jeans when they're not going to the office. They're simple things. Another big thing that I think we need to deal with is that we are not as powerful in the community and not as accountable in the community as we need to be. And part of that is what I would consider the ossified kind of old school way that we arrange our lawyers. I'm the only one out of the three of us who is going to tell you what I'm going to do with my org chart. Our prosecutors currently, we have murder prosecutors, drug prosecutors, property crime prosecutors. That's not how the real world works. A small number of criminal agents drive most of the crime, and they do a little bit of everything. What criminal agents are is local. And I intend to organize our office by geography, to have prosecutors assigned to civic leagues, to have the supervisors assigning cases by ability level and by geography and serving as criminal intelligence agents. That will help us retain lawyers, it will help us allocate our talent better, and it will provide a conduit to the community. I intend to remain a conduit myself also. I've spoken with members of the faith community, members of community action groups, and told them, I need you to talk to me and keep me accountable.
Okay, Megan.
I'm going to agree with 2 points, one of Ramin's and one of Amina's. The lack of being in the community and the community even understanding what we do is huge, and we need to explain that more. That becomes more and more apparent through this candidacy. You know, I will say to people, I'm running for Commonwealth's attorney, and people kind of nod, and then I go, you're district attorney. Oh, so a lot of people aren't even sure what the position is. And so we are doing a very poor job of being out there and explaining what it is that we do and what our purpose is. The other thing that is facing this particular office is they are understaffed. They're understaffed by several attorneys who this legislature has said they should have. And the sad part is no one is going to city council to discuss this with them. I have talked with city council members. They're not aware of many of the issues that are facing, especially staffing in that office. If they have been, it's just because it's recently, because some of us have been talking about it. You know, so that's one of those issues, and that all leads to morale. And it's not about just letting people wear jeans. It's about asking them and knowing and telling them that they are to be appreciated. And that does not happen. And no, Mr. Fadahi, my information isn't 9 years old. It's basically even from last week. You know, people do talk. And unfortunately, those who talk to me are having their jobs threatened. That is not good for morale either, especially when it's not coming from the Commonwealth attorney, but someone who is currently just a deputy. So the morale is the first thing that needs to be worked on in order to best serve the community. When it comes to mental health, this idea of doing violent crime after violent crime after violent crime, of the three of us, I'm the only one that's been deemed an expert in attorney wellness. So I know how to fix this issue and work with our attorneys.
Okay,
Sandra, 1 minute, please.
yes.
This information is not accurate, folks. I can give you a recent history lesson that maybe hasn't made it through the grapevine. A couple of years ago, due to body cams, the General Assembly issued an unfunded mandate to localities everywhere. By that mandate, the Norfolk City Council should have given us 7 additional prosecutors. Our office spoke to them about that, recognizing that what's going on in Norfolk means that our number 2 line item in the budget is now debt service. We agreed to take 2. It wasn't because we didn't want 7 lawyers. It wasn't because nobody knew the phone numbers of the city council people. It was because we acknowledged the realities of working in Norfolk. So incomplete information, incomplete facts. If the city council wants to give us 7 lawyers, we'll take them tomorrow. We'll gladly take them.
Okay, we have come to close to, I'm going to try to get one more question in before we do closing remarks. It might be close to 8:30, so bear with me. Then this is an important one. Kind of relates to something that we've talked about a little bit before, but with a budget of over 6.2 million and a staff of nearly 40 attorneys, the Norfolk Commonwealth's Attorney's Office is one of the largest law firms in the city. What experience in preparing such a substantial budget and managing such a large staff do you have that makes you the best choice to lead this office? And we will start this questioning with Ramin.
The beauty of working in an office with 40 lawyers and 45 staff is nobody has to be an expert in everything. I'm going to be very glad to rely on longtime experts in this area. We have Betsy Powell, whom you all know, who is our comptroller. Betsy's an expert. My chief deputy Commonwealth's attorney is responsible, Krista Fulton, many of you know her. In fact, she succeeded my opponent, Ms. Swizon, as the head of trial advocacy. She also is responsible for $2 million a year in grants. Our budget's actually closer to $7.2 million. And Krista is responsible for writing the grants that have gotten us that money and the money for Virginia's first Family Justice Center, in part in collaboration with the Sheriff's Office and the YWCA. So I have a stone cold expert who, by the way, has been willing to put her own job on the line and who's gotten some very unpleasant feedback from someone I won't name about, and who is not in our office, about agreeing to put her own job on the line to be my chief deputy. So I'm not going to sit here and claim that running the corner store is going to qualify me to run Walmart. I'm not going to say that, because I can balance my checkbook and do my 1040 that I'm going to be, writing the budget on my own. I'm very lucky to have experts who will help me from June the 9th all the way till January the 1st.
Okay. Amina.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Ramin said. I can tell you that is something that I would definitely leave to the comptroller in the office or the accountant. I can tell you as Commonwealth attorney, my experience as a defense attorney uniquely prepares me for the policies that I need to put in place, how I can put those policies in place. I am confident that the different platforms that I discussed and the ones that I have developed during my campaign would prepare me, would make me the best candidate as Commonwealth attorney to make sure that crime prevention is something that is effectuated by everyone in the city, and that the things that I'm doing will bring the city closer together. And that means bringing the citizens of Norfolk together with, law enforcement would be in the room, the sheriff's department. So again, what I am running for and what I am promising everyone in the city of Norfolk is that with my 20 years experience as a defense attorney, I have unique expertise in crime prevention, as well as bringing people together in order to get the best result when a crime has been committed. So I would definitely leave the budgeting to the comptroller, the accountants that are in the office.
Okay, Megan.
So to some extent, I agree completely with both of them. The experts and the money people, I always say, check my math. I am not a money person, but as the person who is the head of the office and who is arguing over budget issues and who should have the information when asking for budget changes, you do have to know pretty intimately how it works. I do not know specifically how Norfolk works because I didn't do the budget in Norfolk. In Gloucester, the time I was the interim Commonwealth attorney did happen to be when the budget was due. So I submitted a budget. It got submitted on time. I had to meet with the Board of Supervisors to defend the budget. So there is a little bit more experience on my end. I do want to just take a few moments to address two things. One, yes, Krista took over my position as lead faculty for trial advocacy for prosecutors at my request. I had done it for 10 years and I felt after 10 years, fresh eyes were needed. And she is very good at organizing. And I always have respected Krista. And the conversation that we had about her job was, I told her the only thing I wish was that I had heard it from her, but that her job was safe and she needed to know that. So I'm not sure where that other line went. She is valuable to that office. Simply choosing to be getting an opportunity as a career step should not cost her job.
Okay, folks, I have many more questions I'd love to pose to you tonight, but we've come to the end of our questions and we're ready for our closing statements. So I'd ask, as I said earlier, our closing statements will begin with Ramin, followed by Amina, and lastly by Megan. So Ramin, 3 minutes for closing statements.
Friends, it's really great to have been with you tonight. We're at the home stretch of a long campaign, and I'm here to ask for your support. Yes, we're all friends and neighbors here, but there are real profound differences. I'm called to do this, and I feel morally obligated to point out to you the differences among the three of us. I get to speak first. There will be pot shots at me. Afterwards, I won't get a chance to respond. You don't have to choose between a career defense lawyer and a career prosecutor. You can vote for a defense lawyer and a prosecutor in me. You don't have to choose between someone who has technical proficiency and someone who has vision. You have both in me. You don't have to go backwards. Have someone in the chief prosecutor's office who wants to go back to the old ways that fed mass incarceration. You don't have to vote for someone who's going to have to learn how to fly the plane in midair. You can vote for me. I'm here to try and narrow the gap between the justice that the wealthy and the privileged get and the justice everybody else gets. I'm also here to carry on the work that we've advanced in the General Assembly to bring justice reforms that will apply not just to Norfolk, but to jurisdictions that do not believe in criminal justice reform. Finally, you don't have to take it on faith. I love Norfolk. I've lived in Norfolk. I didn't live 6 of the last 8 years elsewhere. In fact, I lived in Norfolk when I prosecuted elsewhere. I believe in the city, and I believe in the principles of criminal justice reform. No, I didn't choose to work in a number of other cities as a defense lawyer, and I didn't choose when I theoretically would have had my pick of any office to move an hour away and to work in a jurisdiction that is a hallmark of the old ways. I'm also asking you not just to trust in me. I'm asking that even if you didn't know me at all, that you look at the work that I've done. Look at what the pilot has written about the work that I've done to make the system more fair. Look at the people who've endorsed me. From the Dean of Criminal Justice Reform in Virginia and arguably in all of Congress, Congressman Scott, to Senator Spruill, to Senator Lewis, to Delegate Heretic, to people who don't get along on everything, such as School Board Member Jordan and School Board Member Clanton, Andy Protegiru and Paul Riddick. You don't have to choose a gamble. You can make a sure decision here. And while I may not be perfect, I argue to you that I am consistent with Norfolk's values and I can do this job the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Amina.
So I'm just going to start my closing by saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I'll just leave that there. I've been a defense attorney for 20 years, and I am confident that I am uniquely situated to deal with what I've seen in the city of Norfolk, which made me want to run, and what I've, after running, talking to people in the city of Norfolk about what needs to be done. So I am confident that I, with the innovative ideas that I have, and trust me, they are innovative. They're on my Facebook. A lot of stuff is on my Facebook. I am uniquely situated to deal with crime prevention and basically bringing this city together. I'm excited. I was excited about doing it before I started running. I was excited while I was running, and having talked to the number of people in the community that I've talked to, I'm even more excited to get this done. I know that we can get this work done together. I'm asking everybody to vote for me. Amina Matheny Willard. I am the last name on every single ballot. So it's the last name on the ballot. Early voting, the last day of early voting is Saturday, June 5th from 8:30 to 5. So I'm asking everybody to vote early. Election day, as you know, is June 8th. And I'm just very, very excited. The one thing that you will see throughout my Facebook is I have no problem speaking truth to power. So I'm just asking everybody to vote for me. And that's all I have to say. I've enjoyed this process thoroughly.
Thank you. Megan.
Thank you. If you want someone in this office who has understood social justice since the time they could walk and didn't need it suddenly to become a political movement, to know that people were not being treated equally and that those of us within the system had an absolute requirement to make those changes, I'm the person you should vote for. If you want someone who actually cares about the specifics of their community and work in that community, I am the person to vote for. I did move to Gloucester. And what's interesting about that sort of attack is I moved to Gloucester for an incredible situation where I got to build an office essentially from the ground up, be the chief deputy, work for the first female elected in that jurisdiction. So I'm really not sure how they're doing it the old way works, and work for, yes, pretty much an all male deputy sheriff's office that did not want to listen to women when I first got there, and now do everything we say to do because we have worked together and built relationships. And I moved to Gloucester because I believe if you're going to represent a city, you need to understand it and be a part of it. And what's interesting is those same people who attack my ability to be independent because of who I'm married forget to point out that when I moved to Gloucester, I moved over an hour away from that person. So someone who clearly does not affect my career decisions had to drive to see each other once a week so that I could have the career and make the decisions that I wanted to. I came to Norfolk in 1988 to attend Old Dominion. I have essentially stayed here. Yes, I have left because Virginia Beach had a residency requirement, because I went to law school someplace else, but I constantly come back to this city. And not only do I come back to this city, but I give back to this city. Even when I wasn't working here, I volunteer for literacy programs for underserved kids, for teen programs to help them serve in the arts and in leadership. Nothing else my opponents have done. I've worked to register voters. I've worked to tell people about the ability to get their voting rights back. That's being progressive, being out there, doing the work, boots on the ground. That's what being a public servant is about. And if you want a public servant and not a Commonwealth's attorney by title, then you should vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think tonight you have seen the candidates that you have to vote for on June the 8th. I want to thank Toy Carrington for our help in this, and our chair, Charlie Santon, and all the members that actually sent in all the questions that we had tonight. So I thank you for that. I'd like to remind you, Amina stole my thunder when she said that the weekends are open for early voting. So this coming weekend is open, and June 5th is open. And of course, every day during the week, you can go to your voter registrar to be able to vote. And if you forget to do all that, I would ask you to get out on June the 8th and vote. We have a lot at stake, and we need to nominate the person who's going to lead us in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for the next few years. So what I'd like to do now is to thank everybody and just say, don't forget to vote. And the Norfolk Democratic Committee thanks you for being here tonight and your participation, and we wish you a good night. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for the questions
you.
and your attendance.
Yeah. Sandra, and on behalf of the Norfolk City Democratic Committee, you did a fantastic job. Well done. Bravo, and kudos to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And,
It was a pleasure.
And I will say this, we are blessed in Norfolk to have wonderful candidates for a multitude of offices, and the Commonwealth's attorney is very much in that category. We have 3 great candidates. It is a difficult choice, and I will echo what you say. Choose wisely, head to the polls, vote, and let's get this done, because come June 8th, we have to unite, we have to get together, and we have to keep the Commonwealth blue, because the guys on the other side are fighting at our heels. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Megan, Ramin, and Amina. Thanks to Toy. God bless. And Sandra, you get extra double kudo points, because by God, we're ending right on time.
Yeah.
That's what I planned. Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.